The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to Sister Speak. You're joined today with me, Lamisa.
And me, Maryam. Me, Sonia.
Me, Farin. Yes, and today our main topic is going to be surrounding youth political engagement. So it's quite a big topic. But yeah, before we get into all of that, does someone want to say what our show's about?
Okay, so our show is a platform for Muslim girls to voice their opinions on current events and issues and even form discussions on general topics such as religion, culture, and politics and identity. We want to note that all opinions and views are our own and we respect all other opposing views.
Thank you. Just to let you guys know, this is a pre-recorded show. So we would say text or WhatsApp in, but you can always direct message us if you do want to let us know your thoughts. We'd be happy to hear them. So yeah, we also currently have a recruitment drive. So if you are looking to, or you want to talk on radio, hit us up at Sister Speak, give us a DM. And we'd love to, do an interview with you and you can join Sister Speak and be talking on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. So yeah, it's that easy. Just drop us a message and we'll get back to you. Okay, so I guess that's everything for now. We're going to move straight into our thoughts for the week. So yeah, who wants to go first?
Put Sonia first.
I just knew, I could feel it coming. But I was actually saying this to Farin on the journey here. Like, I feel like my thoughts are so scrambled this week. I can't even form one coherent thought. But that's partly because of obviously busyness and so on. And I was speaking to my sister about this yesterday, and she kind of just said, just take a moment for yourself. I know we say this all the time on radio as well, but it's all right me giving out the advice and my thought, but I don't do it myself. So she said, just like tidy your room, do nice things, light a candle in your room. And it's good that she said it, because I actually had a lamp, like a room lamp thing, and I didn't have a bulb, and I've been shopping so many times and I just don't buy it because I'm not thinking about myself or my bedroom. And she was like, why don't you just buy yourself a bulb and then you have a lamp in your room? Like, yeah, little things like this, small tiny things that you can do for yourself just to improve your sleep or your living space and so on. So yeah, that's kind of my thought of the week. Kind of just do tiny things just to make your day a little bit better or your night a little bit better. But yeah, just make some time and think about yourself.
We love that. Thank you for that.
It's okay.
It's tips that we could all take. Farin, do you want to go next?
I was thinking about the other show that we did about toxic friendships, and I was just thinking about it and how it's like you have to work through a friendship to achieve a good relationship. It's not like you're obviously gonna argue with them and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I was just thinking about that with my friends and with how many times I argue with my friends, but we're still close and stuff. So yeah.
Lovely. Maryam, what's your thought for the week?
I think mine's bouncing off Sonia's actually, and I don't know if everyone needs to know this. I hoovered my room very nicely yesterday, and it felt so good. It actually felt so good. Like, I hoover it anyways, obviously as often. But I think my thought of the week is about stacking habits. I think a lot of the times we find it difficult to schedule a new habit into our lives, but I think when you stack it with something that you already do, it makes it a lot easier. And I was quite inspired by Sonia's thought of the week last radio show about exercising. So I started trying to do exercise, but at the same time, because I know the routine of the exercise, I listen to a Islamic talk at the same time. So then that way I'm listening to something that's quite productive, but at the same time I'm exercising, and I don't need to hear someone screaming at me. So
that multitask.
It's multitasking, so I feel like I'm gaining knowledge, and I actually like listening to certain speakers, and that way I enjoy exercising because I feel like I'm listening to something that I'm actually intrigued about, and I forget that I'm in pain or whatever, like trying to push myself to exercise, not pain, but to push myself in exercise. So I think my kind of thought of the week is just stack habits together. Put something that's more desirable with something that's not very desirable.
That's a great piece of advice, something that I might start doing. So yeah, thank you for that. My thought for the week kind of goes off our show last week around reflections and new beginnings type of thing. I think I'm definitely trying to be a bit more open with, like, less hard on myself. That's one thing I'm trying. And was it yesterday or the day before, I attended a talk on mindfulness. And I know people talk a lot about mindfulness, but this one was actually really good because the speaker kind of made us do mindfulness, like the exercise.
Nice.
And doing it in that session, I was like, whoa, I actually see why people do this now, because it's really good at just clearing your thoughts, removing all the excess stuff that's going on in your head, feeling yourself, like thinking about what's going on in the moment.
I think you need to show some of us.
I think I'll share it later on after the show, but yeah, just being present in the moment is so good at removing all the excess stresses that you might be thinking of. So if you have the ability to practice mindfulness during the day, I think it'd be really good to, clear your thoughts and give yourself a bit of space and to have a go.
I feel like prayer is like a method of mindfulness.
Prayer definitely is. Prayer is one way. There's so many different ways you can do it. I feel like that one is just kind of letting yourself sit with no thoughts whatsoever and just have a timeout, when things are too stressful. But different people practice mindfulness in different ways. And prayer is one of the ways that I know I definitely use prayer as well in my day to kind of reset myself. And I guess Islamically as well, it's our way of getting rid of our stresses and talking to God in that way. Multiple different ways. If you can practice mindfulness, I think it's really good. And scientifically, it's good for your brain. It changes the way your brain is kind of its shape. It reduces the amygdala, all of that type of stuff, which is your fear center.
I think you should literally say that whole sentence again, because
what it does is brain plasticity is a thing. So the way your brain, it can change shape over time. And the amygdala is the center of fear, kind of controls fear inside your brain. If you practice mindfulness, whether that be through prayer or any other means, so mindfulness in the way of you just calming yourself down and sitting in the moment, these types of things are shown to, this is what the speaker said, who is a doctor as well, these types of things have been shown to kind of shrink your amygdala over time, and that obviously reduces your stress and your fear response, and so it's really good.
That's amazing. What a fun fact.
Fun little fact for you guys, scientific fact. So yeah, if you have the ability to take out 5 or 10 minutes in your day, it's really good.
Thank you.
So yeah. All right, I guess that summarizes our thoughts for the week this week. We're now going to be moving on to our hot topic, which is surrounding health inequality around the world. That's kind of the broad, title. But where it comes from is I saw a case reported by the BBC today in the Gambia, where apparently 66 children have been thought to have died after the use of a cough syrup. And the WHO is stating that the syrup is potentially linked with acute kidney injuries, and this is why the children are unfortunately passing away. Of course, this has caused a lot of outcries from the families that have been affected. And I guess it just raises an issue of health inequality around the world. We see how large the disparity really is, because in this country, it's a lot more unlikely that something like this should happen. We have kind of regulatory bodies in place, whereas in countries where they don't have as many resources, those regulatory bodies might not be in place to carry out the appropriate checks, or they may not have the funding to carry out the appropriate checks. So I guess I just want to ask you guys 2 basic questions. Firstly, what do you think about this? I know it's a really sad situation, but also secondly, ethically speaking, do you guys think that we as in, nations which have a lot more resources, and also intergovernmental organizations, which also have the resources, do you think they have the responsibility to ensure the safety of pharmaceutical products that go out to countries where perhaps they might not have the capacity to ensure that safety?
Well, I think with the ethically question, if we have that responsibility, like our country, for example, and our governments, I think 100% yes. Because a lot of guidelines and restrictions and so many things we do in other countries anyway that are less, quotation mark, developed than us, quotation mark. So it's like we can do all of that stuff when it benefits us and when we want to, when we feel like it. We're very, very involved in other countries.
Okay.
So when it comes to medicine, we should still have that same involvement. Like, we shouldn't be able to pick and choose when we want to provide guidelines and not infrastructure, but you know what I mean? Like, guidance almost. So something like medicine, I think, is just such a huge, important thing. So in terms of like how many procedures we have to, medicine has to go through to get approved, for example, and like non-stop testing and approval and peer reviews and whatever else is needed, that should just be the same everywhere. I mean, I know what you mentioned, that some countries or governments might not have the money to back that and fund it, but maybe there should be a responsibility of, okay, if it's not been properly checked, then it can't be released.
What do you say to people who might argue that we don't have enough money for our own NHS, so why would we then go on and try and legislate other countries?
I would say that, do we have enough money for NHS, or is it the money that's not being distributed fairly? That's my response.
Interesting.
Thank you, Maryam.
Do you want to elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, so I think, we seem to have money for things that are not directed for public services, but suddenly when something crops up, there seems to be a unlimited amount of money to pay for things suddenly. And I think that it's just the priorities of the country. Yeah. If the priorities were the public services, then we would see that money. And if our priorities was to have a ethical responsibility to other countries, then we'd see that money. I just think that it is all about how the country kind of governs itself and how they see themselves as a leading country where business is obviously the forefront, but actually I think the ethical responsibility should be something as equal as the business kind of generating business profits.
I think carrying on from what Maryam said as well, it's like if we're not benefiting and guiding and helping other countries, as we say, we almost put ourselves in that position, like you said, like a leading country and so on. Okay, so where's the benefit? Then you think, okay, it must be on its own people. I don't feel that way. Like we live in this country, we live in the UK. I don't feel like, okay, we're being selfish to help ourselves. It doesn't feel like that at all. It doesn't feel like anyone's getting helped. And I think that's a whole other topic. We can talk about how we as a country no one's really taking pride, this is my opinion, in the country, basically. Like, who's happy about it? Outsiders, insiders, no one. So what's the point, really?
Yeah, I mean, on the point of health inequalities around the world, I do feel like, there's a large disparity which is almost caused by us. If I can say that, large businesses don't take on responsibilities for ensuring that countries can get medications and access to pharmaceuticals, for example, at a low enough price. That's one thing that they also don't do. In terms of regulatory checks and bodies should be in place around the world. I think that's one thing that should be done, and to ensure that those regulatory bodies are regulated themselves. I think that's the big thing. So countries may have regulatory bodies in place, but they might just be shells of organizations, for example. There might not be any other kind of auditing system or any way to keep them in check to ensure that they're doing their job. So I think that's a really important thing as well. But coming on to the topic of kind of our country, so you guys touched on it. There's health inequalities that occur in the UK as well. I guess my question is, what do you guys think about the health inequalities in the UK, and what is one way that we could perhaps combat it?
I think I just want to share my thoughts on how I feel about it. I think that there is a lot of health inequalities in the UK, and I think a lot of people are demonized, especially if they're on benefits or if they can't afford to attend appointments. For example, if they come from a low socioeconomic background, or if they come from a deprived area, then the access to that hospital will be a lot farther than people who live in a centre where there's multiple access to hospitals and doctors. And so if someone has they don't have enough funding, or their household budget is very low, then you have to think about the cost of even attending appointment. And you see, hospital appointments, they say that there's a certain amount that is lost if you miss an appointment, but actually no one really talks about the ability to actually afford to go to these hospitals, because you're paying to get there and you're paying to get back, and that could cost quite a lot for a lot of people. And so therefore people may miss the appointment just because they need food on the table, because they can't access their healthcare, and so then it's a vicious cycle. So I feel like it's really important to talk about the inequalities in terms of funding in people to access to hospital. And I see that it's a kind of broader kind of problem, because there's not enough funding even in the NHS itself. But then again, I would go back to my point. I don't think it's the fact that we don't have the wealth. I think it's just the distribution. The distribution is not equal.
I see. Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
I think health is such a basic thing for everyone, and it should be like the government's first priority to ensure that everyone's healthy and that everyone has what they need to be, safe and not have any problems with their health. So I think it should be the government's first priority. It doesn't matter where you're from, how much money you have, you should be allowed health regardless. Yeah.
And it's shown, people have done studies. I don't have said studies at hand at the moment, but you know, there is a large disparity in access to healthcare. Also the way that people are treated as well. I think we've seen that through the pandemic as well.
I was going to ask, if I can, Farin, have you seen a difference between healthcare in the UK and healthcare in Spain?
I haven't. I think Spain is healthcare in Spain and the UK is free for both of us, but I haven't seen any difference. I think it's the same.
Interesting. Okay. Sonia, how do you think we might be able to combat health inequalities in the UK, for example?
I think we can't right now, which sounds so pessimistic and horrible.
Really? Why do you say that?
Because it's like we're too far gone down the wrong route. But we should be able to reverse that, hopefully, and make changes. But if you're talking about right now, I think we just have such a long way to go. And the whole mindset of a lot of people in this country needs to change, that we're shifting towards a different mindset anyway. So things like inequality is in health and so on probably just get larger, but that sounds very negative. So hopefully change can soon come.
I disagree.
Go on, Maryam.
I think that if governments and institutions can do U-turns on tax cuts, I'm sure they can do U-turns on the budgets on healthcare, and they can raise the budgets for healthcare.
Well, I hope they do, but I feel like no one really fights for that. No one really fights for anything.
I think no one fights for it, but I think it's possible, and I think it's about priorities. So yeah, I think that's why we have trade unions, and that's why we have that Enough is Enough campaign, because I think people are trying to lobby against something that's really deeply affecting us, and I think people are now just choosing. People who are working in the healthcare system have 2 jobs. They thought this would be a viable job for them. They were able to put food on the table, but they can't afford. They're working full time and they have to choose between food and heating. That's ludicrous. I don't think that should be the case. So I think that's why now that momentum has happened, and I genuinely think it's about setting the priorities straight. And I think it's about I know the whole topic of the show is about youth political engagement. I think it's now the onus on us to make sure that our voices are getting heard, and we're lobbying towards a country that we want to live in, and the vision of the country should be aligned on how we want to kind of go through it. So
100%. She said some very powerful stuff there. Yeah. A sentiment that we all kind of resonate with. I also think that we are so lucky to have a national health service. It's unbelievable how amazing that service is, that we can all get free healthcare at the point of need. However, we need to think about what would happen if that was taken away. If we got changed to a system where we have privatized healthcare, when I think about it, kind of, let's say logically, the inequalities that are in place affect, at the moment, with a national health service in place, affect those from low socioeconomic backgrounds, but also minorities as well. If we have privatized healthcare, the people that are going to be affected will stay the same, and even more so. And I feel like it will massively increase the disparity between the rich and the poor. And we are the ones people from ethnic minorities who often don't have a lot of money anyway. How are they going to be able to afford private healthcare? It's a crazy idea. And so I think it's so important for us to preserve what we do have in place. And like Maryam said, really rally for ensuring that the NHS is a priority. And I know everyone says it, but we need to see kind of action put in place. In terms of making healthcare more accessible, I think there are kind of more simple things that can be done to reduce the inequality. I think a lot of inequalities come from the fact that language is a huge barrier, and people often do not understand sometimes what is going on with their healthcare, whether that be you speak English but you don't understand the medical jargon as well. I think putting out information in people's languages. The UK is such a diverse country. I don't think we should be against kind of ensuring that we have leaflets in a few different languages, or ensuring that letters are sent out to people in a language that they can understand. These are like small things that can be done to increase the access to healthcare. Maryam was also talking about transport and the fact that people find it difficult to come in. And the thing with public transport as well is it may not be a patient's fault that they are late to an appointment. Public transport could be late, and therefore they end up being late. They miss the appointment. Then they have to book another appointment. That affects the NHS. That affects them as well, because they're having to pay again to come in. So things like this, when Maryam's saying, if you can subsidise, for those who are maybe under a certain income bracket, their transport into hospital, that would be super helpful. You know, it just kind of takes off the financial burden, especially in a time where financial difficulties are so
Yeah, I just
prevalent.
wanted to add, because quite interestingly, people are going to say, well, where are they going to get that money from if they're going to subsidise? But just to let you know, if your taxpayers' money subsidises MPs' lunch, so for every £10 an MP spends on lunch, the public contributes £7.60, and that's according to The Guardian. So if, you know, I just want to see what's the priority. Is it MPs' lunches or the public services? And I think people really need to kind of find out where their money is going, where their tax is going to, and who actually deserves it. It should be the most vulnerable in our community. It shouldn't be the people at the top that, you know, can afford to pay for their lunches, not the people that have to choose between going to a healthcare appointment or food on the table. You're very strongly about this.
It's a very interesting standpoint. So yeah. Okay, I guess that brings us to the end of the first topic, or the hot topic, sorry. And we may as well now quickly move on to our main topic, which follows on quite nicely. It's about youth political engagement. I guess, firstly, just very broadly, I want to ask you guys, what do you guys think of youth political engagement? What does it mean?
Just a general sense.
Just a general sense.
The word youth political engagement, I would say young people age, even 13, like high school age, being interested in politics, knowing about politics, and just taking some kind of action as well. Like, I can give myself as an example. When I was really, really young, I'm saying like 10 years old or something, we used to get leaflets through the door, obviously, about like any political campaign and parties, all types of parties. And I used to be so interested and read up on it and a lot. And the thing is, when I went to school, I found that a lot of people were. And we used to all talk about it in class. Our teachers used to encourage us to talk about it. So, yeah, it was really, really, really nice. And that was when I was really young. And as I grew older, it actually disappeared a little bit, which makes no sense because you should be more interested because it affects you. But yeah, in general, youth political engagement, I think it's just about young people, let's say under the age of 25, which I am. So 25 and under, just being interested in politics.
Would you agree with that definition, Maryam?
I would say, I don't know if I agree or disagree, but I would just say it's about mobilizing young people to get their voice heard about certain campaigns, certain policies, and just talk about or lobby towards something that they feel very strongly about.
Okay. So I know, Sonia, you said that from a young age you have been introduced to politics, and you were kind of interested in that fizzled out. Maryam, at a young age, were you kind of interested in politics at all?
I guess more broadly in the news. So I was I used to be really interested in Newsround. I don't know if you guys know what Newsround is.
Yes, I used to love that.
Yeah, so it wasn't even something that was discussed in my home city. It was just my interest. So I used to literally wake up extra early just to watch Newsround in the morning, and then when I used to come back from school, I wanted to watch Newsround again. So I used to watch Newsround like twice a day, every single day, and that was kind of my segue into like news and understanding what's happening in around the world. And I think it has never left. I think I just something that I've always been so keen to know what's happening.
Okay. With Sonia, I just want to ask you, why do you think it fizzled out? And if you're interested in politics now, what can you turn you towards that?
So I think as I grew older, like say, 16, so still A-level age, it became interesting again because there was a lot happening in this country. And actually one of my first ever votes that I was able to do, so aged 18, was while I was still at school, because I was 18 in school. And also it was a huge one, like it was one of those that affected the rest of the UK, if that makes sense. It was Brexit. So anyway, so that was a huge thing. So then it was there. But then, as you said, why it fizzled out, I think it's because it sounds a bit, I don't know what the word is, but you know when you're playing a game and you're losing? That's how I felt. That's literally how I felt. And you know when you're losing and you're not interested in playing the game and you're like, I don't enjoy this game. That's how it felt for me. Everything seemed to be going the wrong way. And I just didn't, I was like, I don't want to be involved anymore. It's not working. What's the point? Sounds very sad, actually. But that's what happened.
Ironically, we don't want to be involved anymore, but
we should be more involved more than
whether
ever.
we like it or not.
Oh yeah, true.
We are affected because we live in this country.
You know, it's funny that you say that, because when I was 18 and the big vote was happening, and I was still in college at the time, so everyone around me was talking about it, and we actually were going to start almost like a petition in college to say that everyone should be taught this basic stuff. We said that it should be mandatory to learn this, whether it be economics, because that subject is quite involved, or just politics as a whole, but it should be taught in school, because you can't be 18 doing your first vote, which for me, like I said, was a huge vote, and have no idea what it means or what any of these words like jargon means. So yeah, that's something I do think we are involved and should know what we're talking about.
That is very, very true. Hopefully we'll touch a bit more about that on the second half. We are coming to an end on the first half of our show. Just very quickly before we end, I do want to say that we are recruiting, Sister Speak are recruiting for presenters. So if you want to get involved with the show, just email us or DM us on Sister Speak on Instagram. But we'll see you after the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Atif Nawaz. Listen to Inspire FM shows in your time by heading over to inspirefm.org or listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome back to Sister Speak. You're joined with me, Lamisa. We've got Sonia and Maryam with us as well. So before the break, we were discussing health inequalities along with youth political engagement, which is our main topic. And we're just going to be continuing the discussion now. This is a pre-recorded show, by the way, so apologies that you can't send us your thoughts, but we do love to hear them. So if you want to DM us on Instagram, please let us know what you think about this topic. Let's go from where we left off. Sonia, you were talking about the fact that kind of politics and an introduction to politics, perhaps, or government and the way our country is governed should happen from an early age, perhaps in schools. Would you like to elaborate a bit more on that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, when I was 18, still in school and education, I voted for one of the biggest things in the UK that's ever happened, and it will go down in history. And I had to make that vote just with the education I had thus far, which was nothing on politics. So obviously I read up on it myself, as you should, before you placing a vote and so on. But I really strongly felt, and so many of my peers felt that as well, we should have been taught in school, because how can you not be taught about something that will directly affect you every single day of living in this country? Like we're not taught about, but hopefully you learn how to use money, where you do learn £1, £2, like you learn what money is, the concept of it, how to use it, right? That affects you every day. You use it nearly every day. Everything like NHS, for example, as we mentioned, you kind of go to the doctors and so on, like these little things, you learn. Why do we not learn about politics? We are literally the people. It's a democracy. It's not just something you live in. It's something you have to actively participate in. Whether or not you want to, you have to, or it will affect you.
It depends on our choices.
Exactly, yeah.
I guess one thing is that, do you think it could open up a slippery slope to perhaps propaganda, because schools are based on a national curriculum which is overseen by the government that's ruling at the time? If we do teach about politics in school, because at the moment the onus is very much on yourself. It's an interesting, information is freely available and you have to look it up, right? And you're saying obviously we didn't have enough exposure to it, and so you didn't know what to do when a big election was around. But if schools do then start teaching about politics, could it not open up the door for...
I mean, I think that there's two ways of looking at that. You're definitely right. There is the risk of bias and propaganda. But the two things I would say is, number one, I feel like that will happen in school. That happens in school in different aspects and fields anyway. It can happen. Is that risk in any subject? I do really believe that, especially humanities type subjects, history happens. Okay. But we learn about religious education, and that's something that's you yourself, an individual thing, but you still learn and are aware of other religious parties, which you have to be, you should be, because then you're ignorant if you don't, right? So I think, but also, like I said, the other thing is that it's too important to not be taught this in school. And schools, then they need to find an impartial way of teaching, and I don't think that's that hard at all, actually. Just at least be aware of how politics works, what the parliament is, and what different parties are.
So more from a general standpoint and an informative standpoint of this is the system that's in place in our country.
I mean, I'm sorry, I know Maryam was just saying my point, but like we used to do citizenship, and that used to be mandatory as well for like half a year or something, and then just slipped away. So it used to be like RE and citizenship, that's the way it used to work. But really, that first of all, it wasn't mandatory anymore. It just disappeared as a whole subject in my school. And secondly, when we used to talk about citizenship, it was very much about morals and ethics in my school.
Okay.
So I don't really know what it was really teaching us. And I thought, if you can teach us that, how you think we should morally behave in society, then you can teach us about politics as well.
Okay.
And just adding to that point, if politics is a optional subject that you can do anyways, if the infrastructure is already there to teach and the curriculum's already there, then why not just standardize it? That's my kind of opinion.
And maybe introduce it from a younger age. I don't know about you guys. Is there a politics GCSE? Because I know there's a politics A-level that we were allowed to take in
I'm not entirely sure.
I don't know about GCSE, but I think you guys are right. Maybe from year 8 onwards, just giving standardized classes, and they can be short. You know, PSHE is during tutorial times. You could also have somewhat politics lesson during like a small.
That also disappeared in my school.
Yeah, I don't think we had a lot.
Also, you can use the premise of student representatives because that's democratic. You have to elect a student rep, and so you can use that as a premise to kind of discuss how does democracy function and how does that impact in terms of a broader level in the country that you live in. So there is creative ways of introducing politics to young people's life. Is just using the structures within the school. I just think people need to see it as an importance.
Yeah, we can't be what's the word? I feel like ignorant, but also to have no education
complacent
on it. To have no education on it at all puts us in such a bad position almost, because now you're entering the world having to make these decisions, make these votes, and also having no idea who's in power, what's going on in power. If you've never ever taken an interest in politics by yourself, you will have no idea what's happening. You wouldn't.
And I think a large source for a lot of kids and young people is their parents in terms of introducing them to politics. And I think I can't say that that's always a good thing, because obviously we all have different views and things like that. But for people to just blindly follow their parents and what they say on such a big topic such as politics and something that affects us all, they may have different values to what you will then end up being in, or your situation. Your situation isn't always going to mirror the situation of your parents. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's really important that children and young people get a wider perspective of the issues that are in place in their country, because there is a small percentage of the population who don't have the same issues as the rest of the population. And these people are, obviously accustomed to what their situation is. They want what's best for them, and that makes sense. But actually what's best for them may not be what's best for the country as a whole, or may not be what's best for the majority. And I feel like it's about understanding and seeing and widening their perspective to see the problems that other people might face, to then be like, actually, what's best for the country is maybe doing this,
But we can't make that decision without information. So I feel like you need that to make an informed decision, an informed vote, and you need the education. So I do feel really strongly about that. Maybe you've dragged me back into politics.
Just on the show.
Yeah, I mean, I've been feeling it recently too. I think I've had an interest in politics from quite a young age. But unfortunately, as I've grown older, especially since I've left, I think, sixth form, and now I have university and other things to focus on, I haven't been as engaged as I used to be. Why do you think that, it's easy for young people to fall out of interest with politics? Why do you think our engagement is so low? Just to give you a few figures. In the 2019 election, only around 52%, this is from the BritishElectionStudy.com, this is where this figure is from, around 52% of people aged 18 to 24 voted. Why do you think that is? Whereas people who are aged 75 plus, their stats are a lot higher. It's like 85%.
I think it's got to do with the fact that they didn't know how to make informed choices because they didn't have access to information. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you don't see tangible results, and that's what people don't feel like engaging in politics because they're not going to see any outcome of it, or they just see that it seems to always sway for the majority. It doesn't really go the way that they kind of anticipated. And I think the other thing as well to mention is that if you're coming from a disadvantaged community or from a low socioeconomic background, you probably can't afford to engage with politics and have the time to understand how these policies are going to inform you, or even go to these circles to educate yourself, because your priority is just survival. And I think that's really important to discuss, because there is inequalities in terms of accessing politics, is the fact that could you afford that time or the money to even be involved in it?
And I think that's what leads to the fact that a lot of people who are in government and who are making decisions for the rest of society don't represent the normal population.
I think it's almost a luxury to kind of be interested in politics and give a lot of time towards politics. It is a luxury because, like you said, a lot of people have to focus on survival, education, providing for your family. You don't have time to read up and, rally and campaign and so on. There's just no time to do that. So that's a very good point, because then it just reflects as the higher up you go, you start to lose all these people. The higher up you go, people that represent us, for example, in my opinion.
Wow. I think that's such an eye-opening point, though, because it's not talked about at all, really. And you're right, people are focused on surviving. They don't have time to engage with politics. What would you say, what are some things that people might be able to do, young people especially, to stay aware of the political landscape? Because at the end of the day, as much as we say we don't have time, etc., and a lot of people don't, a lot of people do become disillusioned with the fact that, okay, the decisions aren't going in the way that I voted for them to go. But unfortunately, that is democracy. The majority of people, their thing is going to go through. But at the end of the day, you have the ability to kind of rally for what you want. It is there. It's hard to do, but it is there, that opportunity to do so. What would you say? Obviously, we're affected by all of the decisions that are run in the country. How would you say we can keep in touch with what's going on in current times? What are some ways that maybe you do, Maryam, maybe you do, Sonia, to try and stay?
I think just for a broader kind of sense is, especially for young people, if you're already using social media, then just use that as a way to kind of inform yourself. Even I get a lot of my information from Twitter, and I obviously fact checked it and all of that, but a lot of discussions happen there, and it's quite easy to access, and it's quite easy for you to understand. The jargons are not that difficult. They speak in quite good colloquial language, so you can understand what's going on. So just use the kind of resources that you already have or already using in a way to inform yourself, because it is going to affect your kind of, the trajectory that you're going to live in the future. Personally, for me, I think I like to be more physically engaged in kind of activism. And even when I went to university, the first kind of political kind of engagement, I was a student rep. And then I started to work in the Students' Union, and I ran in elections. And then beyond that, I started to do something more on a broader scale in terms of a European context. So I think it's just finding out your interests. And that's not to say politics is going to be for everyone. Not everyone's going to have that passion or that drive. But I think everyone should take the onus on themselves to just at least inform themselves, so that when they're making decisions, it is going to impact the wider community, and have that sense of responsibility for the wider community. It's not an individualistic choice. Politics should be for everyone, and you have to think in a holistic way.
And also just to get your voice heard, especially if you feel like, things and your ideas, things that you have that you think would be good if they were implemented. For you to be able to, get that done and put in place, you need to put in your vote, you need to put in your say. And political engagement is just one way of doing that. So you said social media, Maryam, is a good way of staying in touch. Sonia, what about you?
I think Maryam made a good point anyway, but I think there's some good facts out there. It's just a thing about finding the factual information, and also take things with a pinch of salt as well for social media. But other ways of staying in political landscape, I think if you're at a university, for example, or any kind of group, speak to the people around you, see how they feel. Like, even if people have different political views from you, which often they will, I think you can learn a lot from that. try not to make it about the person, I would say,
Yeah.
because often you do, because it reflects. It's just straight away you think, oh, if you believe that, you must be like this. But just think about their view, where it's come from, and so on, and try to research that. But just try and talk about politics, I would say. But if you are, again, take things with a pinch of salt and do your own research afterwards, and don't let it get too deep, as you'd say.
Why do you think discussions about politics in kind of professional settings are ostracized? Because I think you're right. It's a good way to understand other people's points of views and get you a bit more interested. But there is a stigma around discussing politics.
I think it's because people are attributed to their opinions, and so if you're assigning yourself to one political party, automatically you're kind of attributed to that stance. But I think one thing I should mention as well is that as young people, you're going to be evolving as well in terms of your gaining your knowledge. And so I think that should be something clear for yourself, that it's okay to make mistakes in terms of understanding what politics is, because it's so broad and it's so in depth. You might have a political opinion, but later on you might, when you're discussing with someone, you might realize, actually, I don't assign to that. And that's okay. There's movement. You don't have to specifically rigidly stay in one position in terms of your stance or ascribe to a certain notion. And in terms of your question, in terms of why it's ostracized in workplaces, is again because you kind of frame that person to have that view, and so if you disagree with that view, you automatically kind of attribute to that person to that political view, and anything they say is rendered because you don't agree with them. So I think it's healthy to have discussions and just as Sonia said, to unpack, okay, where is this coming from? Where's their stance coming from? And that actually allows you to have a more robust conversation, because what you're really trying to do is think about, okay, they have this opinion because it derives from this, and I have my opinion and it derives from this, and let's have a discussion, in a conducive way, because I'm going to understand your perspective for what it is, and you're going to share your point as well. And then that way you kind of humanize it. I think a lot of the times we just don't realize that the other person we're talking to is a human being, and they have their background and the experiences, and the same way you want to be respected in that sense as well.
Yeah, and exactly echoing what Maryam said as well, it's like you have to take their political view and your political view just as what it is, and not a whole reflection on the person, which is so hard to do. And that's why, like you said, it's ostracized in the workplace. And it's funny because I actually met someone in a workplace who had, let's say, an opposing political view, and I'm not even joking, like from that day on I just never saw them the same way again. I was just like, I cannot believe that it changed. And we got along so well. We were like best friends in the workplace. Literally everyone would say, oh, your buddy, like, you guys feel lost without each other, like we were besties. And then I found out that piece of information, and they were saying stuff about the political party that I felt like I supported, that I was just in shock, like it changed everything. But it shouldn't change everything. Like, if we can respect each other's religions and faiths and get along, like, we don't feel the need to always fight for our, we think that's your faith and this is mine. Why can't we feel the same about politics? Maybe because it affects my freedom. That's how we feel sometimes. Like, your beliefs are affecting me directly, and this is what you wish for. But we just have to find a way to think, okay, no, that's fine. Like Maryam said, they've lived their lives and they've come to that conclusion, and I've lived mine, and this is why I've come to my conclusion. It's very hard to do, and I think that's why, in some ways, if you don't think you're ready to hear the opposing answer or something, then don't talk about it in the workplace. It might ruin the workplace for you.
I think another way as well, because we have that sense of stigma towards the other person, then both kind of opposing views don't ever get to know each other. And if we kind of discussed, okay, your political views actually directly impacts our lives, if they hear it from a lived experience, maybe that would be a way of kind of, I make them understand why the opinion may be so, it might have a huge effect on you. But if you kind of stay away, okay, they have this view and you feel that they're ignorant, but you haven't actually talked to them and you haven't shared your experiences, and they haven't humanized how their decisions are affecting you. So I think it's actually good to spend time with people that oppose you, because then you get to understand them and they get to understand you.
That's very a good true. Point. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the media plays a big part in this, because we assume things about other people associated with parties straight away without even knowing them, and they will assume things about you as well just because of what you're affiliated with, and that's all the stereotypes and that's all the propaganda and so on. And so I think we need to think away from the media, like Maryam said, and make them human, and you're a human. It's easier said than done. And I actually remember a teacher of mine said, she was like, 2 things I don't discuss with people, and she said religion and politics.
Yeah.
So I get where they're coming from, because you don't want to get in a sticky situation and so on. But my final thought on that is, you don't always have to fight for your right in like a workplace.
Okay.
You know, you could just respect someone else's views, and they hopefully they respect yours.
I think maybe introducing kind of debating about such topics and discussing such topics at a younger age will help kind of remove those feelings, personal feelings towards another person. Do you see what I mean? So the idea of your political views represent you and your morals as a person, in a way, maybe it does, but for you to then have animosity towards another person because of that, if you are used to discussing these types of things in public situation and you're used to debating with another person and still get along with them afterwards, having that early introduction might enable you to navigate that easier later on in life, and then open the floor for further discussions, which is basically what politics is based upon, right? It's discussions and people's views, and then being able to work out what is the best for everyone. Ideally, that's what it should be.
Yeah, that's a very good point you make, and that brings back the whole idea,
introducing it in schools a lot earlier.
Bring politics into schools at an earlier stage. Let us know about politics.
Exactly. In terms of accessibility towards young people, like you said, they gave out leaflets during political campaigns, these types of things. A lot of people we're in the age of entertainment in small chunks, right? Short form entertainment, where it's like very, very quick, very, very easy. And I feel like nowadays our attention span is like that. I find it myself. If something isn't engaging me within the first few seconds, I'm going to click away from it. So in terms of informing ourselves when it comes to big election times or large campaigns, decisions that are going to affect everybody, political parties come out with huge manifestos, pages and pages of information. And let's be honest, no one's going to sit there and read through every single thing and think, okay, yeah, I agree with this policy, or I agree with that policy, or this is something that I don't agree with. No one's going to do that. How do you think parties and government can make this information a bit more accessible to people?
They can make posts on social media. I know we've touched on it before, but if we're talking about young people, naturally we're going to say social media. And they can do it from a completely, because like sometimes you can't trust just a normal layman on social media saying this is what they say in the manifesto. I don't know if you've read the whole thing, but if it's coming from someone actually part of that party, they can't lie. So they're going to tell you
shouldn't lie.
They shouldn't lie. But like, as in, they should reflect what's in the manifesto, and they would want to anyway because it's their manifesto. So I think posts is a good way of doing it. Short clips, like you said, short chunks. And you know what? I remember when COVID happened, the whole thing, and if you went on the .gov website, they had different formats of the same piece of information.
Okay.
Because I remember downloading it from my dad, who can't really understand, he can read English, but like a 20-page document on COVID, it's not going to get through to him. And they made it for schools and for children as well. And it was just a very basic picture. This is what you need to do.
Okay.
So like, because there was always guidelines were always changing around COVID.
So a similar approach to manifestos and
absolutely. It's a great idea. Why not do that? Put it on the whatever your official website is so we know it's real as well. But just short chunks, like you said, use pictures, please.
I think the just maybe a difficulty that can come out of that is the oversimplification of their manifesto, and it could be misconstrued to be interpreted in ways that it's not really portraying the truth. So I think it's quite a difficult one. But I do know some MPs do use social media platforms. So for example, Zara Sultana, she uses TikTok and she explains things. Another idea I kind of have is that you know how there's like PMQs.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, there's that. I think they should have that for
specifically
students.
for young people.
Yeah, specifically. Students, I think it should be for like sabbatical officers and universities, so student union elected representatives. And I think it should be across the whole country. All these sabbatical officers should come to Parliament, and then they should ask questions to any candidate that you're going to represent us. This is our future. Because firstly, sabbatical officers are elected by the university students, so they're representing student views anyways. and then they can submit questions, and then it can address, and that way that will show that there's an engagement from young people, and they would feel included in this political landscape.
I think, on the other hand, it should be open to not just sabbatical officers, but actually anyone and everyone in that age bracket who wants to come and ask questions. That way, I know exactly what I want to ask, and I know that I will get an answer. I think that is one easy way of streamlining the process for people, because I know this political engagement is really, really important, and we should try and be able to take out the time to be involved. But at the end of the day, every single one of us do have a life to live. We have other commitments. We have things like that to do. And so to have an allocated time where you can go in and ask all these questions and then come out with the answers, it streamlined the whole process. I don't have to read the whole manifesto. They've given me the answers that I want. And if I'm not happy with it, I can then further streamline myself by going online and researching on that particular topic. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I think logistically as well, people who are engaged will ask us questions, but then that's not really reflective of everyone there.
Exactly. So I feel like by having an open floor, it enables people who wouldn't usually be involved to then have the opportunity to go and get involved. So yeah, I mean, we've discussed quite a lot. This is a very big topic. Any last thoughts on this topic? What are your kind of tips and tricks?
Get involved.
And yeah, why? I guess lastly, why is it important? Why should people be involved?
Because it affects your life, and we should see that we're not individualistic society. We're a community, and you should make a decision based on that.
Okay, Sonia, what about you?
I think I echo what Maryam said. We are a community, and also it affects your daily life. Your decisions can change the country, so please get informed, get reading. Yeah,
I would say same thing as these two. Everything that happens in this country is due to the votes of the people, and the people that we put in power. If you don't agree with it, then you should go out and you should vote and make sure that your voice is heard as well. Also, just being able to subscribe to kind of news apps, this type of thing, or download BBC News or something like that, to kind of get a source of information. And then obviously if you feel that maybe they're putting through a certain view, you can do a bit more research and widen your...
Just a quick one, your institution, especially if you're a student, a lot of the times it's free subscriptions. Okay. Just go for that.
Great stuff. Okay, we have loads of thoughts on this, but yeah, we are at the end of the show, so please do join us next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at Inspire FM Luton.